What's up, and welcome back to Interpreting the Stars, where today we're talking about one of the most famous alien films ever made. It's the 1977 flick, Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Now, if you have not seen this film, I do want to forewarn you about something. Essentially, everything alien-related in this movie, even nowadays, has piggybacked off of what this film presented. This movie is basically... it created almost all of the alien movie tropes, so going in blind, you'll probably think that this movie is unoriginal, predictable, stereotypical, and trope-heavy. But I will remind you that tropes and stereotypes and all that fun stuff, that started somewhere. And in this case, most of these started right here with Close Encounters. So no, you probably will never be able to have the same experience with this movie as the folks in the 70s were able to have. But I think you can still have a lot of respect for what's going on in this movie. So, let's talk about the quintessence of this film, and let's get cracking. This review is brought to you by the word of the day, quintessence, the essence of a thing in its purest and most concentrated form, aka my quintessence is a mixture of coffee and beans. Aliens are among us in Close Encounters of the Third Kind when a number of people in a town witness a strange phenomena in the sky that can only be described as UFOs. The people that have a close encounter begin having visions of an odd shape that is calling out to them for some unknown purpose, forcing them to follow the signal at all costs. All the meanwhile, the military is fighting to find the source of the UFOs, and apparently why the UFOs have been making a number of random sounds everywhere they go. This film is a classic for a reason, I tell you. Spielberg has always been a really good filmmaker and storyteller, but he always excelled in telling stories about aliens. Everybody knows in Close Encounters and E.T., but most people don't know his best work in my opinion, which was a TV miniseries called Taken. Very hard miniseries to find, and I think it's just on DVD if anything. If you can find it, I highly recommend you do so because that's an epic miniseries that shouldn't be missed. I've seen it a few times, so good. But his journey to share his passion for aliens was really popularized with Close Encounters in 1977. There's a lot to love about this film, guys. There really is. One of the best things about this movie is the attitude, or maybe atmosphere of the film, which is one of mystery. And as raw of a mystery as you could probably get, because in real life, a mystery isn't just about trying to figure out what's happening. It's also the question of the unknown, and the human condition does not know how to respond to the unknown, so this film goes back and forth between funny scenes to uplifting to scary, to confusing to maddening, back to uplifting and magical. And Spielberg was able to weave these attitudes together pretty seamlessly, which is honestly very, very impressive, because that's exactly how something mysterious and unknown can affect us. And even though a lot of the stuff that happens in this movie is where alien tropes were born, that doesn't actually make them bad. They're tropes for a reason. Everybody wanted to copy the ideas presented in this film, and so many copycats just transformed the ideas into tropes. But, I mean, you have to respect that they originated here. You have to. Plus, it still feels rather original, particularly because of the drive the characters have to find meaning in their visions of Devil's Tower. That sub-story is the first or second thing that you probably think of when you think about this movie, which makes it, in a sense, original in its approach. Even from a modern audience's perspective, seeing it for the first time, but some things just haven't aged well at the same time. Spielberg did his best to make this film visually beautiful, and in a lot of ways it still is, as these UFOs and aliens are all pretty much masked in brilliant light, which makes it hard for the viewer to notice any imperfections in the CGI or practical effects that might be going on. But it's still there, it's still imperfect, you can still tell when things are fake. It does a very good job, especially for 1977, don't get me wrong. But people seeing this movie for the first time, 40 years after its release, will be able to tell the difference. Plus, you can tell that Richard Dreyfuss is the main character, but he's not really adding much independent purpose or function to the story because he's sharing the same basic vision that a ton of other people in the movie are having at the same time. The film is just following him more for whatever reason. The problem that conveys comes down to casting, because anybody could literally play his character, which means that I end up not caring so much about him. I mean, if it's fun to see Dreyfuss act crazy, that's always been the case, but I mean, I really don't like his character, especially because of how his character ends up treating his family, which, if you're even paying a little bit of attention, you'll see that he really does not treat them very well at all. So at the end of the day, based on my rating model, most of the negatives to be found in this film are found on the people category. The characters, casting, individual importance, and chemistry all got mediocre scores at best, while everything else more or less did a decent job. So my unbiased score is 72%, which basically means it did everything that it needed to do, but it wasn't overly impressive from a technical vantage point. But this is also one of those movies that's more about bias and creating an exciting atmosphere, so my bias score is higher at 88%, averaging everything out to a final score of 80%, 80 out of 100 possible stars, granting Close Encounters of the Third Kind with a letter grade of B-. It's not bad at all, but I feel like if I was around 43 years ago, the score would have been a lot higher. But you can't ignore the fact that people are still going to watch this movie for the first time in 2020. It will happen, and when that does, how will their experience be? That's the question. Anyways, I'd like to hear your thoughts on Close Encounters in the comments down below. In the world of alien movies, where do you think this one ranks? Let me know. As for YouTube, you know what to do. Hit the subscribe button if you like this review, because there's more like it coming out. Hit the thumbs up button, because that always helps out my channel. And don't forget about the little bell icon, because that'll help notify you when I come out with my next review. And until then, peace out!